Please.
Good morning. I am Brigitte NAVEZ from CTFL. I work on the product quality program in the CTFL Center of Saint-Rémy-de-Provence. I will present to you a study on the variability of carotte organoleptic quality. It was carried out in the context of a study on consumer preferences for carrot. Why this work on carrot? In general, the two main factors to stimulate the demand are quality improvement and diversity of the offer on the display. The goal is to find an additional product or additional products to the existing offer. Carrot is the third most consumed product after tomato and after potato and tomato, which have already segmented offers. Another point is that when segmentation is developed, and any case of segmentation as gustatory offer or any other specific offer based on visual aspects, on production techniques, or on use as a product for grated carrots or cooking or product for convenience, the success is linked to a test that consumers identify and satisfies them. This test must also be stable. I will present you results from different tests. First, a descriptive analysis performed to evaluate the carrot sensory space. This work was done before an hedonic test in order to choose samples. Then, results of trials on the influence of production factor. It was mainly on the temperature in two locations. So we had carrot grown in two areas. West, it was Angers, and southwest, it was either our center in Bergerac or in Les Landes. It was always experimental fields. And we had cultivars from different types. The descriptive analysis was performed in the laboratory, sensory laboratory of CTFL with a train panel, and this panel of 13 persons was specially trained for carrots, and the carrots were offered as raw and grated. So the results are based on 48 batches and a first year, and another year on 22 batches. The principal component analysis carried out on the mean profile data highlights the complexity of carrot test characterization. So we had the data of 9 attributes we had and 48 batches in this principal component analysis. On the first axis, the attribute sweet is opposed to the attributes bitter, pungent, and chemical flower that I will say after harsh attributes. The overall flavor, also carried by the axis 1, is positively correlated with these attributes, but unlike them, is not negatively correlated with the attribute sweet test. Just a comment, you will see that in other PCAs that we show you, we will have always sweet significantly opposed to the harsh attributes, and overall flavor, the carrot flavor, was in different places in the space. On the second axis is the texture attributes. The attribute juicy is opposed to the remain in mouth, and the brightness, the brilliance, was also on this second axis, and it was weakly correlated with juicy. Now, I will have comment about the position of samples from the cultivar point of view. The cultivar studied belongs to different types of carrot, and they are distributed all over the space. You have on the left the sweet test, and on the right the harsh test. And you can see that Nantais type is all over the space. Imperator and flaky types, different colors types, and the local types. For the local types, I have a comment. They were mainly grown in the waste location, and this type is also distinguished by the firmness, and firmness was carried on the third axis. That explains the position more on the left of the local resources. Now, we have performed a hierarchical clustering on the sensory ratings of all the batches, and it allowed us to gather, to group the batches with more or less similar profile. 4 homogeneous groups are identified. The graph represents the typical samples for each group and an extent. So you have the extent for the different attributes of the group and samples, typical samples for these groups. The first group is characterized by high score for harshes, that's pungent, bitter, and chemical attributes, as well as for firmness. In this group are various heirloom carrots, and for recent cultivars, we can highlight Artemist. The second group has a relatively high perception for sweetness and low for juiciness. In this group is Carotte and the heirloom type Saint-Valéry. In the third group, sweetness is also perceived high, and for this group, overall aroma and pungent are average or high. Bitter and chemical flavor are average. Just a comment, as I say, this work was done to choose samples for a consumer test, and it was in this group where the more appreciated samples by consumers. Then a fourth group is strongly characterized by low score for flavor attributes, especially bitter and chemical aroma. Sweetness is rather high, and in this group, Dordogne is typical. And another comment, in this group, the samples of this group were not among the more appreciated by the consumers. Now, if we have a representation as an extent for each attribute for all the samples studied, you have in yellow the line of the 48, the extent, maximum and minimum, for all the samples, and they are compared to the samples, the 33 samples harvested in the waste location, the green lines. We can highlight that there is a wider extent for flavor attributes in southwest and a lower level for attributes sweet. although the cultivars were not exactly the same on the two locations, a location effect seemed likely. So now it's the second part of my presentation, is the influence of the location. First, with the same 48 batches, it appears that the two locations strongly influence the space. You have on the left more sweet, less harsh are the west sample, on the right those of the southwest, in yellow. We can also highlight different behavior for cultivars. For example, you have Maestro and Bolero located in each part of the space, while you have Dordogne in the same part for both locations. So we had this observation in different trials. So we had another trials where we compare the same 12 cultivars on the two locations with the hypothesis that temperature is an important factor. So after 100 days from sowing to harvest, first we highlight the cultivar effect, with on the right, the space is slightly different from the other. You have sweet here, overall flavor, the harsh attributes, and juiciness here. You can see on the right the cultivar with more harsh characteristics, and on the left the one with less score lower for these attributes. You can also highlight a location influence. Samples from west are distinguished on the upper part of the space, those of southwest in the bottom part, but I tell you, with more variability. We have identified an interaction between location and cultivars. When we observe the position of the cultivars, we can see it's a transfer from the bottom part to the upper part, but for several cultivars, the one who have average characteristic for the harsh attributes, they are perceived more sweeter. Now, when you have a representation in a space, you have an overview of all the attributes. Now, with the profile, I can illustrate the difference for typical cultivars, like Dordogne, which has more or less the same profile in the two locations, just slightly sweeter, whereas another model we have, which is Phoenix, is significantly sweeter and less chemical when harvested in the west part. When the period from sowing to harvest is longer, the trends are stronger. For Phoenix, we have a quite similar profile for the west part, but for the other samples coming from southwest, you can see it's higher, the harsh attributes are higher. For Dordogne, it's not the same trial, but anyway, you see that there is less differences. In conclusion, I can say that sensorial quality is a complex trait. Sweet is opposed to bitter and chemical aroma. And there is an interaction between cultivars and growing conditions. The cultivars have a potential for different elements, and their expression depends on the environmental condition. Perhaps an optimal harvest stage has to be taken into account. We have to identify the most influent factors. The aim of our study is to provide producers with information in order to maintain the characteristic of a product at the consumer stage. Thank you for your attention. This work was done with AgroCampus.
Phil Simon, USDA at Wisconsin. Thank you for the extensive information on carrot flavor. I have two questions. One is, do you think that grating the carrots before you present them to be evaluated, it will influence the flavor? The other question I have is, are you able to inform consumers in the market what the flavor of the carrot will be before they buy the carrots? Or do they have to buy the carrots to find out what the flavor is?
All right. First, we have performed trials before doing our work with the sensory panel. We were working with slice of carrots, and we have grated the carrot because to the consumer we give the carrots, grated carrots, and we grated them just before to give them, about 1 or 2 hours before. And what we think is that it's more the way they will eat the carrots. That's why we have grated it. And we saw that, for example, juiciness is more, they can appreciate better the juiciness, for example, but for the crispness, as you say, crispness, it's not an attribute when the carrot is grated. That answer? All right. The other question, as I say, it's not at the beginning of my presentation. The taste is not. It's not always a direct information to the consumer. But if you have, for example, a good shape, for example, you have a little carrot with a special shapes, like a cherry tomato. You imagine you have this. If someone buys this carrot, he wants to have always the same taste. If once he has a very bitter one and another one, no flavor, he will not buy. And you don't have a communication about the flavor or about the taste, but you have a communication about something the consumer will recognize.